Now the transaction management system, the software which is responsible for managing the transactions, should see that whatever way it executes the transaction, either by interleaving or in a serial way, whatever way it does it, all the transactions individually, if you look at them, they are supposed to follow these properties, right? So only when they follow these properties, the database will be consistent. Now see this. So we are talking about transaction taking each one by one. Now when you look at a transaction, then it should follow atomicity. So what is atomicity is, if you are going to have a transaction as a collection of operations like this, let us say in the earlier case we have seen an example where we had 6 lines of operation in a transaction, right? Now if you are going to see this transaction as 6 lines, then either all these 6 lines have to be executed, or in case, let us say, because of some error or because of the power failure or some error, let us assume that at the middle the transaction has been stopped. Now if you are going to stop the transaction at the middle, you should be able to roll it back. Roll it back means undo all whatever you have done there. So either do it completely or don't do it at all. So all or none, all or none. So this property has to be satisfied by every transaction, which means either you do it completely or don't leave it in the middle. See what happens if you leave it in the middle. If you try to transfer money from A to B, and let us say you have decremented the amount from A, and before transferring the amount to B you stopped it, then unnecessarily the money will be drawn from A but it will not go to B. Therefore it is a problem, isn't it? So you should see that every transaction is done either completely or none of it is done at all. And the next one is consistency. Consistency means the correctness. So after doing this, okay, who is responsible to do this, to look at this is the transaction manager itself. The transaction manager is supposed to see that either you are going to do it completely or you are not going to do it at all. So transaction manager means the software which is responsible for it is called as transaction manager. And the next one is consistency. So consistency means after executing the transactions, or let's say we are looking at one transaction, the data should be consistent, right? So what is consistency? Let us say in the previous case, if you are transferring an amount from A to B, now before transferring it, let us assume that the balance of A plus B is some number. After transferring it, the balance of A plus the balance of B should be same, isn't it? So let us say A is having initially 100 rupees and B is having initially 200 rupees. Now if you add them both, it is 300 rupees in total. Now after transferring 50 rupees, A is going to be 50 and B is going to be 250, isn't it? Now here it is 300 before you start it. After you do it also, the total has to be 300. So that kind of consistency should be there. Now who should be responsible for this consistency? The one who is going to write the transactions, right? Which means the user or application programmer who is actually writing it has to see that this is being done. And the next one is isolation. Isolation means even though we are executing many transactions together, the overall effect should be as if a transaction has been executed in isolation. And isolation means a transaction should not have any effect on it because of the other transactions executing. That is called as isolation, right? Each transaction Tx must be executed without knowing what is happening with other transactions. Now who will be responsible for this one is a software module called as concurrency control manager. So what is concurrency control manager is? It is going to control the concurrent execution of various transactions in such a way that you will get the same effect even if you run a transaction alone, which means without any interleaving, right? And the next one is durability. So durability means let us say we have made some changes to some database element, and then after doing it you are supposed to save it somewhere, and if you save it in the hard disk, then it is going to be there forever, right? Now let us assume that before saving it to the hard disk something happens, then even after let us say the power failure or because of some error you have stopped the transaction. Now again when the power systems are up, you should be able to maintain that information, right? So whatever changes you made and whatever you want to be permanently available, that should be permanently available. In case if they are not permanently available, then it is going to be a problem, right? So durability says that whatever modifications you do should be permanently present in the database, right? If you want it to be, all the updates done by a transaction must become permanent, right? So who is going to do this? The recovery manager is going to do this, right? Now let's see the states of transaction or transaction states. Okay, now a transaction, whenever it starts, it becomes active. Active means it is actually started. Now when it is in actual, when it is active state, it is going to get executed, and while it is executing, it can be in this, see, whenever you get the transaction, it will be in active state, and while it is executing, you can say that it is partially committed. Partially committed means whatever changes are done by the transaction, you have not made them permanent, right? So it is partially committed. And then if something happens in the middle, and if it is not able to go through the complete transaction, if it is not able to finish it, then you are going to say that it is failed. Now from failed state, you are going to abort it. Abort it means whatever changes are made, you are going to undo all of them and you are going to abort it. Now from the partially committed, if it completes, if it is going to complete successfully, then we are going to say that it has reached committed state. Got it? So active state, from active to partially committed, and from partially committed to committed, or from active state it might directly go to fail, or sometimes from partially committed to fail and then finally aborted. Got it? So whenever we commit a transaction, it means that whatever changes are made by the transaction are permanently written onto the hard disk, and the changes are going to be there forever. Okay, fine.